Here we are right at the beginning. We're going to start with 30 minutes of feedback for you, do our hour of drawing lessons, and then get to our bonus time. We are here to look at your work, so let's go. 9 slides, some hard to read at 9 on a slide. I'm going to zoom in on one in particular. That is pretty doggone fearless energy there, Cord. Good work. Some is messily explorative. Some is findative, characters. And any of these that you like enough, you could finesse into developed characters. Good work, Cord. I'm not going to make any suggestions. I'm going to tell you that it's nice to see that you worked on fearless process. And if by the end of our 4 sessions, when we get to style and technique and line and tone, which is certainly happening in here, that you want to dare to take some of these to where they're beyond sketches. Sketches are great for concept artists because they don't have to spend a lot of time on them. Finished pieces, illustrations, may be another thing where you want to develop the style more. Let's see who else we have. Here's another 9. Let's take a moment to look them over. There they are. Let's choose a front pin. Christina. All the drawings were done on paper with micron pens. I tried to go with Kley's favorite subject, but by drawing what inspires me, I dared to draw things that usually make me doubt, and I am really happy that I had the opportunity to do so. They are not perfect, but are fun to me, and I finally feel excited to keep learning anatomy and movement instead of feeling that I have to. Thank you. Well, thank you. I didn't do the work. You did. You included a personal drawing revelation. Past fear, past compulsion, finding a vibe. That's about your experience, which is really important. If our experience drawing is not pleasant, good chance we'll avoid it. If it is pleasant, good chance we'll keep at it, and then good things in drawing can happen. That's about doing the work, making it pleasant somehow if we can. But it's also about product. These don't look like Kley's work. They have a kind of light rain feel. I don't see you doing the kind of thing Kley often does, digging in, stabbing for blood. I see you tapping out rhythms, or maybe scratching to see what's under there, or starting with whispers that evolve into a clearly spoken word. And I appreciate your expression of shifting strategies. You try it one way, and then you say, okay, I know what that's like. You try it another way, and what you hope is that in doing so, you'll find those 2 things I mentioned. One is fun in the process, but then the other is a product that is different than if you had been trying to draw with someone else's sensibilities, trying to get into their skin. Okay, good. Thank you, Christina. That was 9 of you, and I'd love to talk more about each, but we are taking a mere half hour to look at half 100 uploads, but a couple I'll save for later in the presentation to talk about ground planes. For a slide here, Gabrielle, when I look up here and you're asking about, you're showing what you did with these skeletons, you mentioned how poor your knowledge of animal anatomy is. I'm going to take some time with this. With Kley, you don't need much more developed skeletons than this. I'm not saying you can't use them. I'm saying you don't need them. Let me show you Preston Blair. Preston Blair was an animator. And as an animator, he's showing us that he thinks about anatomy and how it relates to movement and parts to accentuate and enough knowledge to know when bones change their positions relative to each other. If this dog's foreleg reaches out, that tricep in there will stretch. And if it lifts it up, it's being lifted up by a tricep, which will bunch. And even an animator who knows how to do a contour line that will either bunch or stretch. The bones are a great secret. Don't try to learn them here in these 5 to 10 minutes. If this is new to you, don't try to memorize these now. I only want to show you that anatomy is there and you do care. This is a shoulder blade, and it always angles that way at rest. This is an upper arm, a humerus. This is an elbow. Now watch this. On animals, that olecranon process of the elbow can stick up more than Preston Blair gives it. This is a pelvis, and we can think of it always angling back like that. Even on a cow, when the tail goes up like that, the pelvic block is angling down. This is an upper leg bone, a thigh bone, and it comes down there with a kneecap that makes that bump. And then when we go down to the heel, watch this. The heel bone, the calcaneus, sticks up more than he's showing there so that you get a little pinch in there. And then down here, analogous to it, there's a golf ball-sized bone on there that is sometimes called the heel of the wrist, the heel of the hand. Now, I'm showing you that just to let you know that those bones are a part of what an artist studies so that they can, like an animator, make it up and put it all around. But knowing that isn't enough. If you do surgery on animals and you know everything about that anatomy in there, it does not mean that you can draw them and have them prance around and look like they're in three-dimensional space. Therefore, another discipline besides anatomy is form, and that is to see the horse's rear end as a beach ball we're looking down at, and that the center of the back is aimed this way. And over here, it is a beach ball that we're looking up at. And the part that aims back is like this. It's the same way as the first one, except now we're looking down on it more severely. That should be down there a little further. See, this is, we're barely looking down at the North Pole. This, we're looking down at the North Pole more severely than on that one. That's how an animator manages to spin these things around into different positions. And then if they want to chisel up by snapping those rubber bands tight and putting all that plane into shade and putting this one into a different kind of shade, we've got something that makes anatomy now drawable, practical. Let's go back to this. Form is turning it into blocks, cylinders, spheres, barrels. Anatomy is knowing what the moving parts are, which parts are hard and not. And I want to show you an example of a Preston Blair cartoon where he is aware that there is a pelvis in there that is nothing like the shape of a horse's iliac crest. But it doesn't make any difference. It's a cartoon horse. And then over on the other side, there's another one. And then there is the spine that goes between them. There's three-dimensionality on this. This is the scapula. It's closer to us than the spine. This is tucked up in there, and so he's got two little lines in there to give that squash and stretch. He's aware that there would be a little concavity in there. He's aware that there's a little bit of a cave in there. That is using this knowledge of anatomy and fusing it with form. This was to show you what you would learn if you're taking beginning drawing lessons where you care about anatomy and form. Kley knows skeletons better than this, far better. But I don't think he usually works skeletally. But let's look at one that he did seem to start skeletally. There's a scapula. Look at this horse. I pointed this out before. That is not only a scapula that looks as if it is coming toward us, where you might see a little of that over on that side, but it also has what's called a spine of a scapula that makes a ridge that if we were to draw some cross contours on there, they would go something like that. If we were to put shading on the side plane of that ramp. And I think he is so aware of that as he flings that in there, and that his first line might have been this one, his second line might have been that one, and then he said it's somewhere in between. And look how he even does. Look how he did two lines there. I can fill in the... I think he is aware of that plane. I think he's that skeletal in his understanding. Why does this line change directions and go out there like that? Because there is an olecranon process of the ulna that I've mentioned several times that goes out there and stretches, that flesh of the tricep stretches on it. It's just amazing how familiar he is and how it is revealed in his drawings as almost throwaway stuff. I think he learned anatomy deeply, really knowing those bones and muscle groups. And then, when he drew, found a cartoony approach that he could insert bits of anatomy into as they served his compositional purposes. Let me say it less academically. He used anatomy when he liked how it looked in the picture. And he doesn't shade everything equally, but he decided, I like that there, and I like this all there, and I like that there, and it gives me a kind of thing like this that is rhythmic. Look at how he does this with the cheetah. I don't think he took a lot of time to put that line down. And I think this line is a continuation, because cats, most four-legged animals, but cats in particular, they have no clavicles. They have no collarbones. And so their neck muscles run right into the upper arm. And then I think this line, which would have been maybe the contour over there, maybe the center of the spine, is coming down there like that and then cutting into there. Gottfried Bommas trains you that way in his animal drawing books to find single lines that you trace around through there. And as I mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago, look at how that elbow sticks up out of there. I got to pause for a moment because look at that. The apparent effortlessness of and he even knows to exaggerate the convexity of the front form in a continuous line, making a concave form that gets thinner at the top, and then a convex form that gets thicker and then thinner and curls twice. It's hard not to go into conniptions over this. All of this is in response to at Gabrielle's bones up there. That was an aside. And Gabrielle, you are doing fine. Those feet look 3D on a spread out axis, where this one we will see the more of the wheel that way, and this one we will see more of the wheel that way, because that one is coming more toward us, one is going more to our right. If I were to put anything on you, it would be to exaggerate elbows and knees, heels, and wrist spurs. Joints can be bony, so knowing the bones gives you enough to exaggerate the joints and make them look functional, if not funny. So what were they? Elbows and knees. Study them in those plates. Heels, which stick up there for leverage, pull that way or leverage that way. And wrist joints, pisiform bones. Now that's assuming you want the joints to look functional. You may just want them to look funny. If you know Don Martin's work, Don Martin did not care whether his wrist joints and elbows were functional. He was going for funny. But look at what he does know about anything that goes into a concave side of crunch has extra flesh in there. You just find that all over with cartoons. Let's see what else we've got here. Vivian, thank you for this. There's line and tone, some reduced to pure line, some with line and tone separated, some with line and tone combined. That's a lot about style. These are displaying style, and this one in particular looks promising to me, of that separation of line and tone. Carl up here asks, having a harder time getting into a playful flow, anxious about showing work to others and comparing skill levels. How do you get out of this mindset when aware your work will have an audience? Carl, your colleague, Ariel, on the slide below, conveniently asks the same question and also answers the question and asks, what is fearless? Finding out what scares you and going for it. But that does not mean that because fire scares you, you should throw yourself into it. This is close to psychoanalysis, but it makes a point. If you're scared of something, why? There's another way to go altogether that may be best for you, and that is just not do stuff in public for a while. Keep it in the family. I think most of Kley's best work was personal. If the self-consciousness of being watched is getting in your way, try not being watched for a while and watching yourself. You can give yourself all the forgiveness you need. And then when you're feeling daring and you're feeling you've got something, bit at a time, allow yourself to be watched and get feedback. That is one thought. Jump into your fears or say, I'll deal with them later. Let's keep going. Good slides all. I looked at them closely. I appreciate all you put into them. Inventing, bridging the gap between empathy and analysis. Lois, I may lightly suggest to you that you go heavier with some lines like you did down here, like a musician practicing dynamics. A lot of this past 2 weeks' work has been to dare to get loud. It does not mean that because something's loud, it's worth hearing. It's for the speaker to dare to shout, to get past timidity. But good slides all. Thank you for them. Konstantinos, you have a list of questions here. The answer is yes to all of them. Abstracts, boxes, organic shapes. If you're studying music, you work on rhythm, melody, harmony. So here. Great style, Brandon. Noe, beautiful fluid work and tone to line stuff. Very good work. That is exactly the kind of stuff for this course and this part of the course. Louis, you have some good things going on in this slide. Lowbrow and gritty. That may be your appeal that you grow with and continue to exploit. But I think that you should, in your training, take a dose of what you see above you here. Those fluid lines of continuity. And work with them for a while, maybe a week. It is not a suggestion, Luis, that you integrate them into your style. It is a suggestion that you heighten your awareness of that slalom of curves so you can use it or abandon it or combine it with what you're already doing. Thank you all. It's almost impossible not to zoom in on these. These are dense with work. I must zoom in on some. Excellent. The twisting, we're going to deal a little with twisting forms, making them a little harder, which is to make it so that they are, the underplanes and the overplanes are divided with a plane break, which makes it a little hard. Alex, it's worthy work. May it serve you. Sisyphus, lots going on in here. And if your studies were scattered between different topics, for better or worse, the better is that you're obviously getting command of forms. Everybody who's a beginner and you're wondering, how will I ever get there? Studies like this, where you can draw the same thing in a different position and not have to look anything but figure it out, and to know that that line's likely concave because the contours are. It could have been the other way around. There could have been a little dip in there. This one is likely convex, but it could have been the other way. We could have put a hole in there that would have looked like that, lit it, and even put double cross contours on there to make it feel like it's gouged out. That is form analysis. And these are form analysis, and these are minimizing it so that you can get a thick and yet simplified character. Anna, good. Joseph, good. Gnarly. Alyssa will zoom in on yours later. Carlin, you did your imagination exercises this week. Good. May it become part of your problem-solving skills. I read what you wrote there. I am so happy and so sorry that I must move rapidly. Kia, if you fear that your work lacks some grace and beauty, make a separate study, a week or two, to study some established canons of beauty or those inspirations from nature you've collected, the stuff of style that I hope to finish this course on. Leo, working on exaggerated motion. Mika, making marks. Nino Lobo, reveries with emergent style as recognizable as a familiar voice. Good slides. So much here. If you post these in Discord, everyone can see them, muse over them, learn from them, and also find some kindred spirits. I know that Luca cares about ink technique, and some of you are interested in particular kinds of animals. We're going to look at this one, this center image, more closely in a moment, because you're doing an exercise that is going to be relevant in the coming 2 weeks. which is to watch movies and maybe draw some scenes from them, maybe put them into different perspective, maybe cartoonize them. Bernard, we'll come back to this when I talk a little later today about ground planes. Una, good variety of approaches here. Thank you for all this work, all of you. In the past 6 hours, I have been aware of what you have been doing this week and feel good about it. Well, we are past this point, but you can keep with it if you want to. This has been about imagination. Drawing it is a whole other business, and we are no more likely to get our imagined worlds out on paper in drawings without knowing classic drawing than we are likely to notate an orchestral suite without having studied music formally. But we can get the tunes out without knowing music formally by singing them. And we can make notes to ourselves that we'd like to have some chattery stuff in the background there. And make the strings do that cool thing like they do in Appalachian Spring. Or make the drums at this part sound like that John Bonham bit that you like. Get the idea down in the unself-conscious flurry of the child who is confident enough to say, this is what it is. It's not to create an impressive product. It is to rehearse fearlessness. Preconceived, responsive. Responsive is hear a bird song. Consider it a call. Respond. Look at anything, a Kley piece or just random marks that appeal to you, and respond. Join in the song. Okay, I think I'm going to segue into our hour-long lecture on drafting, but I'm going to bridge it with yet another quote from Stephen Sondheim. I'm living in interviews with him. The interviewer asked in this interview with him and Barbara Cook from about 17 years ago, what does Barbara bring in particular to your songs? He says, one of the greatest voices we have for one thing, and she lives a lyric. That doesn't come through spontaneity. That comes about through hard work as well as talent and heart and all that. But the artistry with which you approach every single note and every single word, and at the same time make it sound spontaneous as if you're just singing it for the pleasure of singing it, that's what true art is about. It's making things sound effortless, and you make it sound effortless. What a wonderful compliment. Okay, let's look at Kley doing the effortless thing. When we look at this is more than, there's effort in there, but I think we're going to zoom in. What I want you to see is this is someone who is unafraid to tackle drafting problems. Let's zoom in. Here's the context. We're right there. I want you to see someone utterly undaunted by mechanical inventions. Look at the ellipses, prospective students. Look at the awareness of the ellipses and the positions of the ellipses and the eccentricity of the ellipses. That's how open or closed they are. Look how they conform to the bigger form. And not just mechanical inventions, but hands. This is an artist utterly undaunted by organic inventions, anatomy. I feel like we should just look at this all session. Look at the stretch, emphasizing concavity on the dorsal side of that hand. The dorsal side of the hand is not concave, but it can go concave when you stretch it like that. Look at the chatter of hatching everywhere and the more bulbous curlicue stuff composed together. Look at the changes of planes that he's got. Up plane, down plane, segueing to up plane, down plane again, segueing to up plane. Darks and lights darks and lights, and then high halftones and low halftones, outlines and no outlines. This one's worth a lot too. We may return to it another time. Speaking of hands, let's get in closer. I'm showing you these following the Sondheim quote. One of the ways jazz improvisers let you know that a dissonant phrase was deliberate is by repeating it. It says, I meant that. But it also honors an important principle of a song that 2-year-olds are sensitive to: repetition. Make it a rhythm. That's here. Do you see how he did this, and he did this, and he did this? What are those lines? Let's look down here. I want you to see the unfinished part of it. These lines, which were probably the first lines, they are like a sustained note, like a chord or a hum that carries through with some melody over it to contrast that. And if you know Arm Bones, I am quite sure that we are seeing him do the lateral epicondyle, the medial epicondyle. He's even bringing in some of the chunkiness and the pointedness of it and the olecranon process of the elbow and turning them into a shape. Let's back out. Drawing lessons from Heinrich Kley. It's all there: anatomy, form, gesture, design, characters, virtuoso technique. He knows them. Here's how to know them. Study them. Anatomy alone is one of the most enjoyable pursuits of art education. Robert Beverly Hale said that when you start to learn anatomy, there is a good chance you will never again be bored for the rest of your life. And if you want me on this, there they are. They are not going wide into the culture, but they are going deep. This is the best I can offer right now for free, but it is not a light commitment. It is a course. If you'd like the whole course on Heinrich Kley, go to my website, martialart.com.